As we approach the 10-year anniversary of Star Wars The Force Awakens, the Cantina crew reflects on the sequel trilogy and share their honest thoughts about the films nearly a decade after their release. Once we conclude our retrospective of the sequels, we move on to coverage of the latest comics, specifically Ewoks and Star Wars A New Legacy. We finally land the pod with a discussion of the Dark Lord, Darth Momin, and leave our listeners with a lingering question: how will Disney handle the Sith Empire in future Star Wars films? Let's go. Welcome back to Cantina Chronicles, a weekly cantina crawl across the Star Wars galaxy where we have robust conversations about Star Wars, including news, notes, and theories across all Star Wars media. Grab a seat and let's talk Star Wars. Grant and Adam, how you doing this morning? We got an AM cantina crawl today. How you feeling?
Yeah. Good. I woke up like an hour ago, so I'm still kind of like trying to get my senses about me, my wits about me. But no, I'm excited. Yeah, it's gonna be good.
Yeah, for the first time, we're not in the cantina. It's kind of rare for us. We're out here
cafe
under the twin suns, and it's feeling nice.
Yeah, we're brunching it today.
Rad. It's great to see you guys again. This week, I think we're going to talk a little bit about the 10-year retrospective of Force Awakens and the sequel trilogy. And I think we might even get to the Ewoks comic book series and a one-shot legacy of
a new legacy.
A new legacy. Thank you.
A new legacy.
Yeah. Which is a big thing.
And who did his homework? Interesting. No,
Adam did his homework. Yeah, he's going to probably anchor that conversation.
I heard legacy and read the Legacy of Vader.
Well,
that was the legacy comic series. But
I will say I really liked a new legacy.
I would just like to say I was confused, slightly confused.
Yeah. I do not get releasing a title Legacy within a week of each other. I will also say that I really liked A New Legacy when we talk about it, but you definitely read the superior comic. Not that this is anything bad about A New Legacy, just Legacy of Vader is real good. We'll talk about it.
Well, the cover of A New Legacy has got Valance in the center of the page.
Yeah. You got my critique already. You have my one critique of the entire issue, but we'll talk about it.
And it's sort of a retrospective of all the Marvel comics that have sort of come out in the past 10 years.
It's all new. It's all the new characters developed for the comics. And it's really like 3 short stories, but the first one takes up about 3/4. So it's really one long story and a couple of really short ones. And the first one does try to fit in as many new characters at once, taking place, I'll just say right now, and we can talk more about later, taking place before we actually meet them in the comics. So it's 2 years BBY.
Oh,
so it is kind of, yeah.
It's funny, I picked up my singles and that was actually not given that comic.
So it's interesting. Wikipedia has very little information on it, and I got it digitally. So part of me is wondering if they only released it digitally and not in comic stores, because it seems like it's a kind of a hole for a lot of people. It doesn't seem like it. Yeah. People are aware that
it could have sold out, and I could be low on the queue.
Maybe.
So I think it's a hard copy is available on Amazon, so it does exist.
Yeah,
and it's expensive. It's like $16.99 or something because it's like it's a larger comic.
It's not that large though.
Yeah, and Charles Soule wrote that first story that's in it, that long story you're talking about.
Yep. Yeah.
But nonetheless, we'll talk 10 years. 10 years on from The Force Awakens. How do we feel about the sequels 10 years later? That sort of stuff. But anything else you guys want to cover?
That seems like plenty.
Not much in the news this week, so I think that'll get us enough to talk about for sure.
Yeah, everything's happening in the comics right now. It's just insane. There's also like a Bad Batch comic series, Ghosts.
That's right. That's coming as well.
Something.
Yeah.
So whatever. Yeah, Ghost Agents 1, which I guess is like Lucas's like sort of underworld storyline that they're sort of turning into a comic with the Bad Batch.
It seems like that's what's going on. It came out this week. I read it, and it takes place before the Bad Batch series. Like they are still part of the Republic. But it's fun catching up with them. I have issues with how Wrecker is drawn. He's not big enough for me. He seems at times I'm like, is Wrecker there? And I'm like, why is he the same? Did he like grow? Did they give him like a ton of steroids between that time and like?
Oh, maybe.
But But yeah, it's
atrophy. Adam,
it's,
you're getting old.
Yes, yeah, it's true. But they're definitely it's definitely looking like the Underworld stuff's coming in, so it's fun. It's a good read.
It's so interesting because I think it's rumored that there were like 20 odd episodes, 20 to 50 episodes written for George Lucas's Underworld TV show that was supposed to be like a live action TV show that was supposed to take place, I guess, after they did the prequel trilogy.
Yeah.
You wanted to make this show, this Underworld show, essentially, and it's sort of all being harvested for Bad Batch and Andor. I mean, like, if Andor gets into the dinner parties with Sly Moore, I do wonder if sort of like some of the Underworld scripts were given to Tony Gilroy, and he operates off some of that stuff.
I wouldn't be surprised.
The Underworld intrigue in Coruscant, and Chandra, things like that.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think it was. It was. I think around 20 episodes were written fully, and I think he had 100 episodes.
Right.
Like
a
planned
bulk
out,
of content,
like
a bulk
at least
of content.
like an overarching plot line for 100 episodes.
Yes, there was lots there.
The reason it's 100 is, don't forget, we're in the day. That was the day and age of syndication was still king, and you needed 100 episodes of a show to get syndicated, which is when you make all of them.
Did we know the running time for each episode of Lucas's Underworld? No, we don't.
Back then, it had to have been 45 minutes because it was still network was still king. It had to have been 45 minutes. I can't imagine them doing a 22-minute like dramatic series back then.
I wonder if that's what killed the Underworld video game, where he was just like mired in this, trying to sketch out this plot, and so he kept pumping the brakes on the storyline for the game.
Maybe. The 1313, the Boba Fett story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised. We've seen that happen before. Like the Republic Commando books got decanonized because Filoni and Lucas wanted to do something else.
Yeah.
With Coruscant, with Mandalore.
Right. Yeah. So I don't know. That was a wild time for Star Wars. And then ultimately everything got canned, and he just sold the property.
Yeah.
He was like, you know what?
I'll just take a few billion and go away. Yeah.
Yeah. Wild. All right. Well, so we talked a little bit offline about the prequel trilogy. I mean, the sequel trilogy. Apologies. And yeah, sort of like, when are these going to age into being something we look fondly upon?
Yeah, I mean, Grant said it best where he said, "When is this going to age into fine wine?" Like, I like that. I
texted you guys. I said, when is the sequel trilogy going to age like fine wine? Because it's still just not there for me. It's still.
No, I don't.
I'm still waiting for that feeling that I again, I feel like I'm slightly biased to the prequels because it hit me at that young age, the most impactful sort of, formative age. And so that kind of gets a handicap essentially of just, I love that trilogy.
Yeah.
But in the original trilogy, I just saw it as great from the get-go. I don't know why. I think the grandiosity, I think the bombast, I think the huge moments, the actual story, the kind of romantic Shakespearean family story was just very powerful. Yeah. And then the sequel trilogies, I'm sort of waiting for that feeling. But again, I think you guys, I have a lot to learn from you guys in terms of being a little older than me when you saw the prequels, and sort of how you're evolving with those films, and then how you compare your evolution with those films and these films, the sequel trilogy.
Yeah. Do you mind if I run with this first? Because I have like a couple. Let me start with my first cynical take and then my other take. And the cynical take is, I don't know if they ever will, because these are movies made by committee, not made by an individual voice, which is not saying that that's necessarily a bad thing. But when you have an individual voice, like you had Lucas in the first 6 movies, you get a sense for what was going on, and the quirks come through and the weirdness comes through because of that. And that's things that you kind of grasp onto. That's the cynical take, right? Like, I feel like there's a chance that they never will. My more thoughtful answer, or my more possibility, is I don't know when, but I feel like they will, because as you alluded to, Grant, I think a lot of people have to go through the same process that I went through with the prequels. Like, we've talked about it on air. I was a card-carrying member of the prequel haters, right? Oh. Like, I just didn't like them. They just didn't do anything for me. I think it hit me at the exact wrong age, right? I think I was like 19 when the first one came out, and I was like cynical and an angry young man, and just wanted to. And I don't post on the internet, didn't post there. Thank God there wasn't really a real good internet back then, because who knows what I would have been saying on the internet. Nothing racist or horrible, but I would have been probably going off on the movies. But a couple things happened. One, if you're a fan of something, a real true fan, you take the good and the bad, right? So whenever I would do a rewatch of Star Wars, I would force myself to watch the prequels. Like I had to. Like I couldn't not do that. That's silly. And so a couple things happen. When you watch something enough, you start seeing the good and ignoring the bad, right? You start kind of trying to figure out how to enjoy your way through. And the second thing that happened is meeting people like Grant from who's a little younger than us, right? Of that age group, who have a deep love and connection that I feel like you and I, Ben, had with the original trilogy.
Yeah, associated memories.
And seeing it through their lens really made me kind of fall in love with these things, because it just watching that fandom grow really that is good. I love that scene, and finding the little weird parts that I like. And so that might happen with the sequel trilogies. And the last thing I want to say about it is I feel like of the three movies, I think Rise of Skywalker is actually going to be the one that gets to the fine wine category first, because that movie is freaking weird. It is so much weirder than the first two, and weirdness has a long way to go for what makes a Star Wars movie grow in the estimation of people's minds. So that's my whole thought process take on it. Yeah,
I will say, I've been thinking about this. There's something that goes along, like I'm always so much more positive about a Star Wars on the rewatch than I am first time. And I think there's something to be said for expectations, sort of knowing like, okay, this is going to happen, and like preparing yourself for the awkward. That might be why I sort of my copium, or like how I sort of get past sort of the wonky bits. But I think you're right, Adam. Like the sequel trilogy, it was really an experiment, like a storytelling experiment, where they were like, okay, we're just going to get three top writers and let's do this thing. Let's cook, let's go. And then, but then they didn't meet the standards. And so they scrambled, and you didn't really get anything. And, but we ended up with something weird. So I'm only maybe a year older than you, Adam.
Yeah.
I adored the prequel trilogy when it came out. I think, maybe you had been doing expanded universe stuff. I don't know, but I was just so desperate for a Star Wars, and it was so weird and so fresh. And it showed me a bunch of stuff I've always wanted to see. The Clone Wars. I wanted to see like Jedi Knights at the height of their power, what the Jedi Council was like. Like I ate that up like, a giant bowl of ice cream. I just like all three movies. I really loved them. And, I was taken aback by how much like pushback there was against it. I just didn't get it. And I always loved them. That said, when we did our marathon, I think probably because it's most fresh, like I liked the sequels more than I liked the prequels. Like during that rewatch. And it might just because like I don't know them as well. But again, it's like I got to watch it all in a contained unit. We watched all 9 movies in a contained unit.
I was going to say, don't forget you and I were sleep deprived by the time they got to 8 and 9.
Oh yeah, we were just wacky by the time we got
so that could have helped too.
No, it was like nothing but like cherry Coke and a dream, and like was like keeping us going through that. But I really feel like they connected really well to the other trilogies if you watch 9 movies in a row, which no one will ever do, But I really think it had really good callbacks, and I was like, you know what? You made this work. It's a lot of technicalities and like, well, actually, it does tie back if you think about, but they're beautiful movies. They're exciting.
I think that should be stated up front. They're beautiful films. The sequel trilogy is stunning.
They all look different from each other too.
Yeah.
Which is amazing, because the prequels, as much as I love the prequels, those 3 movies look very, very similar to each other. I feel like because you just have the same director in all of them. So like I love the visual difference, even between 7 and 9, directed by the same person. And to me, they look like very different movies.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And Daisy and Adam
Dan Mindel with J.J. Abrams, and you got Stevie Edlund with Ryan Johnson, and both those cinematographers just bring this wonderfully unique feel. Dan Mindel with sort of the quick dolly shots, the sort of askewed dolly shots that sort of rush into the characters, and it just feels very energetic. And then Steve Yedlin, almost every shot is this immaculate composition that remains immaculate throughout any camera movement, which is like, otherworldly essentially. So The Last Jedi might be the most beautiful Star Wars film to date, essentially. So like you have that in these films, like they are gorgeous films.
Yeah. They're really cool.
So in a movie theater, obviously, Ben, you're probably like the sound is 12.1. The VFX is beautifully composited. There's some iffy stuff. I mean, when we're in the hangar of the Supremacy and The Last Jedi, there's some iffy compositing going on. And you know what's going on there. But nonetheless, the rest of that film is absolutely stunning, and the Fathier stuff is. But like that's just some of the notes that the the bigger audience has sort of the grander audience has shared. They're not even my takes. I love Canto Bight. I love the casino stuff. It's crazy when people say they don't like. I think that stuff works. Yeah. It's almost some of the best stuff in that movie, like in terms of showing a new location and showing the
Benicio del Toro, like
that stuff. Yeah, and DJ and all that stuff is just fantastic for me. The stuff that sort of doesn't work in the larger whole for the sequel trilogy for me per se is just something like how the overarching narrative unfolded when it comes to like the legacy of the films thus far, and how each character's sort of journey is to progress in the kind of post myth era, really like post hero's journey era. Yeah. It's sort of like, what do these olden day heroes do? That's sort of the stuff that I bump up against, but it doesn't take away from the sumptuous photography of the film. So keep going, Ben. Like I just the photography of these films is out of control. It's so good.
Yeah. So that's pretty much it. I mean, and again, then you anchor it with Daisy Ridley and Adam Driver. And I adore Daisy Ridley. I mean, I see her in a couple other movies, and it's just, she's just locked into this spot, like Star Wars spot in my heart, this cozy little area that whenever I see her, it just brings a smile on my face. She's a fantastic actress. And same thing with Adam Driver. Whatever I see him in, I'm like, oh, that's my Kylo. Yeah. And, or my Ben Solo.
She feels like she's vested with power on screen and in real life. There's something mythical just about Daisy Ridley. Yeah. Like, they've somehow achieved this popular culture zeitgeist, like I guess like power fantasy character that everyone can sort of like project onto, and I think her journey is deeply interesting to all of us Star Wars fans. I think that's why the Rey films are just such a an obvious go-to for the next feature length film.
Yeah. Whenever they're on screen, it's just like everything else vanishes. They're just such powerful characters.
I think that's a really good point of those actors and all the surrounding actors. Like having actors that caliber can help paste over some plot issues. And an example of that, I won't go into too much detail, is I saw the new Captain America movie, and I will say that like that movie is surrounded by really great actors. And Harrison Ford, I talked to Ben about this, the amount he is putting himself into that movie is wild. Like he is so good in that movie in a way. I'm like, what are you doing? It's a Marvel movie. You don't have to try that hard. And like that and like and Mackie together, where I'm like, it hides the cracks in that film a little bit, where I'm just like, okay, not paying attention to this doesn't make any sense, but you're acting and being Harrison Ford. It's pretty good. You're on a Peloton on Air Force One. I'm digging it.
I have not seen the movie yet, so I'm excited to see
I will not ruin anything for anyone, but
Oh, that's great. You've seen it.
We saw it last night for a date night.
I want to talk to you after the pod about just your takes, but that's
I got takes.
It's fascinating to see sort of the MCU continuing on, to almost its 20th anniversary, essentially. It's like we're almost there, and it's still chugging along, and just seeing how those films are iterating, and how both Lucasfilm and then Marvel Studios is managing a canonical timeline is fascinating for fans. And so I think the sequels, like you said, Ben, I think they do connect to the original trilogy in such a perfect sort of puzzle piece way, which is like, oh yeah, well, of course the Emperor had a contingency plan. There were clones, the clone became, there's some sort of, granddaughter, some daughter of a clone that is connected to Palpatine, and she becomes the all powerful sort of good guy in the galaxy. It makes perfect sense to me. Like a lot of that stuff made perfect sense to me. It's just the way in which we got there.
Execution
just felt like this zigging and zagging for almost no reason, or for the sake of zigging and zagging. And I was like, okay, like I almost wish it was a little more earnest and we knew the setup. Like I almost feel like this is a story where if you knew some of the setups and some of the larger lore information early on, you could make maybe the relationship part of the story and those moments when relationships change a little more powerful.
Let me give you an example of that. Imagine if the original trilogy, if so Luke, most kind of everything happens except no, Luke, I am your father, or no, I am your father, does not happen. Let's say it does not happen, right? In episode 5. And then everything else works out.
To tell you the truth, that is what the sequel trilogy feels like. It feels like it's I am your father thing that just did not happen.
Well, it happened like with 15 minutes left in the trilogy. Like almost. Like it'd be wild if that happened more than halfway through Return of Jedi. Because I just been going, what? This feels like a rug pull this late in the game. Like if they revealed Rey's heritage in like in The Last Jedi, and then it was a different thing, right? It wasn't her trying to redeem her father. It was her trying to deal with having the connection to the ultimate evil in the universe. That I think would have worked better, right? Because you have an entire movie of her fighting this, I'm a Palpatine. What does that mean? Right. And and a Skywalker sacrificed himself for a Palpatine. Like, what does that mean? Like, but anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. Truly fascinating, territory.
Yeah.
That's the most of my problems with it, I think, comes from the byproduct of hanging out with you guys, where you have such great ideas. And it's like, so I'm thinking, I get to think about what could have been, through the, opaque lens of hindsight and sort of projection without any real like pen to paper detail. Things like, what if Rey was Obi-Wan's granddaughter, right? What if the Emperor wasn't in this at all? What if Luke survived episode 8 and, we got more of him in the end? Those things, what if they did capture a Star Destroyer in the first scene of the Rise of Skywalker? Those things rattling around in there. I'm like, oh, I really would like that. But what we got, I think, was good. They landed the plane. And then, so to answer the sort of initial question, it's good. Is it fine wine? No, but I think it'll get there for me. Yeah. It's close to getting there. Like I'm looking forward to a watch soon, and as a whole, as a 3-movie whole, and I think I'm gonna love it more each time I watch it.
Yeah, and the other thing, Grant, kind of we were talking a bit about off air is the other thing that I kind of forgot that really helped with the prequel trilogy was all of the backfill that happened, because I read all the comics, all the books, and that made things more important. And what's happening now is the sequel trilogy backfill has begun, starting immediately with a new legacy with the Kylo Ren, and that first issue does, and we'll maybe talk about next week. Just that first issue does such a wonderful job of like, okay, how do we thread the needle between episode 8 and 9? Like, how do we connect these two things that don't feel connected as closely as you would think? And I don't know. I think Sewell does just a wonderful job in like issue 1, where I can almost after issue 1 going, oh, I get it now. I see the connection.
Because I think we started our podcast around the time of The Last Jedi. And I think we were talking, and then you have to understand that when The Last Jedi ended for us in theaters, we were basically like, oh, Kylo is going to go on a rampage. Like, we were just going full power fantasy on Kylo Ren. You didn't think you would be doing that in the sequel trilogy. You almost thought that he would get sequestered on Octu or all these other sort of theories that I had back in the day. But it's like, no, he becomes like essentially the supreme leader of the First Order by the end of that film, and he's enraged at the end of the film. And you're like, what does that lead to? And Charles Soule kind of picks up right there at the end of The Last Jedi. And it's what he does first, like his first kind of sort of orders and what he's doing actually make perfect sense.
Yes. Yeah.
He's a little bit of a lone wolf. Like he remains being a lone wolf, where, I thought he was going to command legions and just take over planets or do something like that. And almost a lot of like a theater of war imagery, but it's not. He's very much a lone wolf. He goes to investigate things on his own, which made sense to me. But I did have these grandiose, visions of sort of a great villain, like what Luke saw to do what he did in the hut the night of the flashback. Like whatever he saw, he must have saw that Kylo leading legions to kill innocent people on random planets.
I think that's like what we were talking about. It's like, what if Darth Vader killed the Emperor and became the Emperor? Like that's kind of what I thought we'd see in Kylo, is like him being the Emperor. Like, what's it like in the big chair for him, for a Jedi, former Jedi, now governing the galaxy? But they kind of were like, no, the bureaucracy just sort of takes care of it, and he can just go do mystical stuff. So kind of to answer your question, sorry, I'm just going to throw this
go.
And because you made me think of it, Adam, I think the first thing that popped in my head, Grant, when you're like, when is this going to age like fine wine? I think it's going to be when we have the retconning that happens in the Rey series. I think by then, if whether it's 1 movie or 3 or 10, I think that will sort of be the last piece of the puzzle that sort of, I think will give you rose-colored glasses on the sequel trilogy, because they do a great job of backfilling. And yes, these comics are great, and that's all going to be rattling around in our heads. But I think when we see, Rey back in a feature film, I think you're going to start having nostalgic feelings for the sequel trilogy.
I currently have nostalgic feelings for the sequel trilogy, but it's surprising who I have them about.
Yeah.
It's very surprising. It's actually Harrison Ford that ran away with sort of my sort of love and appreciation of the sequel trilogy. Something about what he means in The Force Awakens is really interesting to me. And then, I don't know. I just think I'm just always going to think about The Force Awakens, and then obviously that brief scene we get in Rise of Skywalker. I'm going to think about those scenes, especially as sort of like the scenes that I really, those are great Star Wars moments to me.
Yeah,
they're like perfect Star Wars moments. They're very mythical. They're familial. It's perfect stuff to me. And it's funny that it was Adam Driver and Harrison Ford that got me.
Yeah,
they got
right.
It's funny that it's the killing of the father and then the reuniting with the father that is sort of like, I think, an underrated aspect of those films.
Agreed.
Honestly, I think everyone thinks about the throne room fight and some of the dialogue exchanges in The Last Jedi, like Kill the Past and the Yoda stuff. Like, I think people think about some of that stuff as the best stuff. And I'm like, I really think when you look back at this, for me, and sort of where my heart sings and where I really have this deep admiration of the sequels, it's Harrison Ford and Adam Driver. It's a couple of those exchanges.
Yeah. No, I agree. And the other thing is, I feel like that's the thing is, like, we're not sitting here saying we don't enjoy them right now. I absolutely do. And I think they're good. But like, there are, and even in them, what I was going to say is there are still moments, this idea that you do still have you even now have some nostalgia for the sequel trilogy, because there are scenes that are like top Star Wars moments in every single movie that to me are like fall into my, I don't want to say headcanon, but fall into my like top echelon of when I think of Star Wars. I think of these scenes, like Rey pulling lightsaber to her. I literally still tear up every single time I see that in Force Awakens. Because
it's funny that's your scene when when she does Vapad like the Emperor. I'm like, yes.
I just
fit that in for half a second.
That kind of like, no, this is the new. It's like just them claiming, like her claiming the legacy and the newness, and then like obviously Yoda, and then oh my God, the Harrison Ford thing in Episode 9. I cannot watch that without crying. I cannot watch that.
I mean, the third act of Rise of Skywalker is, I mean, it's a perfect Star Wars to me. I really, it gives me all the feels. I'm like tears in my eyes through the whole thing, and it's like Rey on the like windsurf board across the seas and like all that stuff in the Death Star. Like really that whole third act, it just goes and it feels great. So kudos to them.
Location. I thought that was a genius location to show us in the trailers and things like that, where it's like, well, I'm locked in. I'm here.
That whole planet is amazing.
It is.
So I think they're aging well. They're not original trilogy caliber yet, and neither are the prequels. So like,
nothing ever will be. Right?
You know what I mean? Like the prequels never got there really. They're always going to be ranked 2. So
I mean, I will be honest. I think we're not going to do official rankings, but I was thinking about this, and I think Episode 2, to me, is actually above any of the sequel trilogies.
Oh, Episode 2 of the prequels?
Of the prequels, yeah.
Because it's very experimental.
Attack of the Clones. Yeah.
No. I mean, we've already established that Attack of the Clones is the best Star Wars
because it doesn't care about the wars.
I mean, it's not above any of the original trilogy. Let's be clear. I'm not crazy, but
right, yeah.
But yeah,
it doesn't care about the wars aspect of Star Wars. It's essentially a detective mystery, and a war breaks out at the end of the film. But it's the war of all wars too, which is why the film is so great in a lot of ways. It's a great starter, and it's the second film of a trilogy, which is very interesting when you look at the structure of how they do each trilogy. And sort of this one's just like, the actual war, is going to be of the focus for these films. Starts at the end of the second film.
Right.
Very interesting structure.
Speaking of nostalgia, do you want me to walk you through Ewoks?
Yeah.
Ben, you read Ewoks? No?
No, I am the only one. I am walking through.
Comic.
I will say, I
will read Ewoks.
You definitely should. It is not. It's good. It is actually really. It's Steve Orlando, written by Steve Orlando, who's great. And this is written at the same maturity level as all the other Star Wars main runs. This is not meant to be a kid's book. I mean, it is, but like, it's not like, it's for everything. And a couple things I'll say about it. It does try to loop in and recanonize a lot from the Ewok movies and a lot from the Ewok television show, which I am not super familiar with. But when I was reading through these, I had like flashbacks to being 6 and going, I remember the Gorax. I remember this. I remember that. Like, I forgot about these things.
I've got to rewatch those.
We should do that for the show. We should do a rewatch for the Ewoks, because I know Carly would love. Carly could guest on that, because that is her Star Wars, because she watched the Ewoks movies before she saw any Star Wars.
Oh, nice.
So like, yeah,
I watched the first Ewoks movie.
Yeah,
and I liked it as a kid.
I think that's Caravan of Courage.
Caravan of Courage. It creeped me out. I had nightmares about that.
Yeah, it's creepy.
I was like, what am I even watching here? It was not weirdly,
I did not watch any of the Ewoks cartoon or any of the Droids cartoons. So that might be my only hot hole in Star Wars, which just made me realize, oh man, now I got to go watch Ewoks cartoon and Droids cartoons to complete everything. So the thing I like about this comic, it is considered a direct connection to the Battle of what was the last series that we wrote? Why am I blanking on it? It's a 12-issue Battle of Jakku, the Battle of Jakku.
Oh yeah.
So this takes place
it's in that era?
It is in that era. It's directly after,
because I thought it was right after the because Adelhard's in it.
Yeah, so that's the thing. So it's right at the beginning of. It's like right at the beginning, and that's it. But Adelhard's in it. Adelhard's like he's in the very beginning of it. He talks to a general, quotation marks. We'll come back around to that.
Right.
Who basically escaped from Endor but left a cache of Imperial weapons. So that general, in order to save his life, has to go back to Endor and get all this material. And so he hires some mercenaries to do it, including Forlom and Zuckuss. Zuckuss is there. Forlom and Zuckuss.
And the new one, right?
Yes. Yeah. The new one is, I think, Koll, Koll, and he's a Duatan.
Yep.
With a droid necklace. Yeah. He's wearing a droid around his helmet, around his neck, which just talks to him constantly.
Yeah, he's like Flavor Flav, but instead of a clock, it's a droid head.
Yeah. And
it's amazing.
So they're there, and at the same time, we basically have Bright Tree Village, the Ewoks talking to each other. They're taking a vote, deciding we're going to get more visitors from the stars. How do we approach them? Are we welcoming, or do we react with them with suspicion, which makes sense? And so there's two sides. It's unclear what they're going to do. And you have a couple of characters from the cartoon pop up, and one's called I think the Red. Oh man,
Red Cape,
or something like that. Asha fan, which is the Red Ghost.
Red Ghost, yeah.
Who's Cheap Chirpa's daughter, who's basically an exile who just like is a badass and goes out and hunts. Yeah. She's out there, and at the end of the day, the Forlom and Zuckuss pull a C-3PO move.
Yeah, right.
Where basically
we are gods, and
there's a thing about a red cloak and a red cape evil bringer, and that's who Zuckuss is wearing a red cloak that he normally does, so he gets mistaken for that, goes to Bright Tree Village. At the end they're kind of like, no, we don't buy it. This isn't working on us. And so they're like, fine, we'll just take one of your Ewoks hostage and they'll just show us where the cache is, or we'll kill you all. So Wicket, our favorite character.
Yes, I was waiting.
Here's the weirdest thing that happens in this entire book. Apparently, Wicket can talk basic.
What?
Yes. What? So it is wild, because throughout the entire comic, they're doing translations. They're doing from Ewokese, and the droids are translating. And then eventually, I think it's in episode 2 or 3, Wicket's just starts talking basic. It's very broken basic, but they're like, oh, you can speak basic? And like, it is weird. I cannot imagine hearing Wicket.
I know. I'm just imagining him with like a cup of coffee and a cigarette being like, yeah, Gorax, am I right? It would just like,
and it kind of gets to that point of just like, it's so weird where it's just like, he's saying stuff where I'm like, you shouldn't have a grasp of that term. Like, it's it's so weird. And so it progresses from there, and basically at issue 3 and 4, they're going on the quest, and they keep getting attacked by all of your favorite monsters and beings from the movies and the cartoons. And then it ends with them getting to the cave, and who happens to live in the cave but the Gorax, which is that giant puppet thing. If you've seen it, you'll recognize it. And it is there.
It's like a disturbed hockey mascot or something. It
is an odd looking thing, and I still remember it from my childhood, how that thing moves, and it's very weird. The other thing that I'll say that happens in the background of this is Cole, who's a Duatan. We get our first honorable Duatan, or has a hero turn, which was nice to see that, because those characters, that species is often portrayed as.
They look like monsters. I mean, they have horns on their head, and we get Pei Anton. I think he's a Stormrunner Duatan.
Yep.
And generally bad dudes, but that's fun.
Yeah. Right, favorite Ewok go.
From movies, I mean,
any Ewok character.
I'm a big
novels, movies, comics.
You can't go wrong with Chief Chirpa, right?
I'm low gray all day.
Low gray's great.
You are low gray. It used to be like your little lower third from when we podcast.
Yeah.
Low gray.
I'm going Peekpaw from Last Shot. That genius slicer Ewok. Because how much would you love to see an Ewok just fold into an ensemble in a live action show or movie where it's they're just part of the team, you know?
Yeah.
Doing highly technical hacking. Yeah.
Yeah.
The Ewok in the chair. You need an Ewok in the chair, you know?
Yeah. There's an introduction of one.
Just snuggle it every once in a while. Squish it.
Chair spins around, reveal Ewok.
I will say they introduce a new Ewok who's just never been before, and he's the one arguing that against Chirpa that we should be suspicious, and he decides to go with the Red Ghost to help basically chase after and save. And it's Midro, who is this old grizzled Ewok who has a scar across his face and is missing an eye. It's pretty good.
That might be a candidate for favorite Ewok. Let me see.
Yeah. And then I had the name before, and I can't. It's Meedro. The one he's in this one as well, who is the thing that sits with me all the time, and I cannot remember which one it is. It might be, is it Turn Koyata? I'll have to Google all these, but it's the one playing the skull, or playing the
the one playing the Stormtrooper helmets at the end.
Yeah.
Jedi.
Yeah, I love that one.
Is that one named somewhere?
It is, and that's why I saw him earlier when I was going through the Wikipedia, and I was trying to get back to it. But I have 4 Wikipedia.
That might be the winner.
Wikipedia windows open, so my computer is dying.
Whoever thought of that? Was that Lucas who was like, you know what? And then one's playing Stormtrooper helmets at the end.
Yeah.
On the drums.
It's great.
Brilliant idea.
Yeah. I will say in this comic, whoever did the typesetting, whoever created the Ewoks font, needs a raise. We probably have that information here, but the Ewok font, just the look of these comics, it's just beautiful. It's it's amazing. I want to get that Ewoks tattoo just because the font looks so great.
It's really cool. I don't know. I mean, I would guess it's the letterer, and if it is, that's Joe Caramanga. But it could be Alvaro Lopez and Laura Braga, who are the artists. So it's unclear whether the artist did it or the letterer. Probably the artist. Yeah.
It only really shows up on the cover, but 10 out of 10.
It's
where Star Wars gets to lean the most fantasy, I think, is on Endor with the Ewoks.
Yeah.
That font, that typeface.
We keep going back to Endor, the Forest.
Space fantasy, baby.
Yeah. It's just you open wide for more Ewoks.
Right?
Endor has actually been a big area of focus, and I think the comics towards the end of this, fittingly, given that we're at the end of Return of the Jedi and moving into the sequel trilogy, or the prelude before the sequel trilogy.
Yeah.
Right.
Which will be 30 years of storytelling.
I know.
Wild, right? Ahsoka and comics and everything we'll be tackling in the next, 5 years. Is that the initiative?
I think so. I think that's the plan.
It's going to take a while, I guess, to dig through all that. But I do wonder if they're waiting, tying back to our last topic, I do wonder if they're waiting for a little bit more acknowledgement of the sequel trilogy and what it got right before they move on to the Rey film. But because I think the backfilling will help. I think a lot of the comics and what they're going to do in the comics is going to help a lot.
Yeah, agreed.
But,
yeah.
Sorry to take us so far away from Ewoks, but it feels like a fitting segue to New Legacy.
Yeah, I do want to hit on 2 things before I leave Ewoks. The one thing I love is that basically the general at the end turns out to have not been a general, but just a supply orderly
just a
who
guy?
stole the uniform. Because the thing
Nice.
that you learn in the first issue is that he was on a escape pod with other Imperials, and apparently in Imperial, with the way it works, if you're ever running out of oxygen, the lowest ranked people have to exit the vehicle first to save air for the highest ranked person. So like all of the people in the escape pod space themselves to save him, who's just a orderly.
That's
Right.
insane.
Oh, that's why he stole it before he got on the
Yeah, he stole it before there, so he get on the escape pod.
He's probably smarter than most Imperials for doing that.
But amazingly, Alucard does not kill him. He just makes him go and clean out all the baby Dianogans in the spaceship. That's his punishment for pretending to be a general and getting a ton of people killed. It's just weird.
Yeah. That's nothing to laugh at, though. That's probably a miserable time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably like, I've got my leg again.
And then, so the other thing is the teaks are there. Those like the green, weird, like they look like Grinches.
Grinches
are there. But Red Ghost has like 7 of their like fur limbs tied around her neck. Like she's a badass. She clearly just killed them and like skinned them. And then the other thing is that I was so unaware of this is Yuzum. They're the one, that's the species. It's the one who's singing in the new version of Return of the Jedi in Jabba's palace, the one that does like the breakdown.
We don't talk about that scene.
What's that?
We don't talk
Yuzum
about
is
that
the
scene.
name of the species. Yeah.
Okay.
They're native.
Yuzum.
They're native to Endor. They come
He's
from
like,
Endor.
ooh, Nite. He's that guy.
Yeah, that guy. So they're native. Yeah, exactly. But
Ben and I only know him by like strange sounds and noises.
That is fair.
He's very Muppet.
Yes.
He looks like he's.
Yeah.
I forgot.
He actually worked in that scene, honestly. There's a larger number that I was like, why are we doing this?
Jiao Yaoza is his name.
Yeah.
Jiao Yaoza.
So they're native.
love it.
So there's like a
love it.
bunch of them around a campfire or something.
Yeah, they're there. They end up helping in the battle at the end, and they repair the spacecraft. So clearly, they're like they live on Endor. And now I'm like, are they the most technologically advanced species on Endor? It's weird, right? Like there might be a more.
Do they have like homesteads and like?
You only see them in
moisture
a couple of
evaporators?
scenes. You don't see where they live. But now I'm like, we need that comic. Like I need to know exactly.
I know we need another level of technology immediately.
They do
Adam
have.
and I especially. We're like,
They do
who
have-
are they?
Yeah.
I was like, Mom, I want to sing.
Actually, that's like you're talking about an incredible one-shot comic right now. Right? That's what you're talking about. Was
I
it
don't
Joe
know.
Yowza? Yeah, that's
Joe Yowza.
She's like, you will be an engineer just like your father.
That's like dead on. That's hilarious. I feel like they should, like they did all from a certain point of view. I feel like they should get every artist and comic writer and just every single character you see on screen gets like a 5-page, 10-page story. Just release
Origin one shot
online.
like the
Yeah, for
Origin
every
series?
character.
Star
Just do it
Wars
for every
Origin
character.
series.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
It's every background character like a Therm Scissor Punch one shot. Who is he?
Yeah.
Or like
We do have some background on Therm Scissor Punch. He did show up in like a
He's in the comics.
like a
Claude,
Forlong
like a
comic,
Claude
right?
one shot.
Yeah, he actually shows up. He shows up in the High Republic era. He's part of the gang with Dex, and Dex. All I remember is Dex has a mustache in that. That's the only thing I remember about the whole thing. He's younger.
Yeah.
We're entering useless knowledge territory.
Right. I mean, welcome to our pod if you haven't been here before.
Star Wars listeners are just like, what is happening?
Also,
Who?
apparently, Yuzums are name checked in Book of Boba Fett. I have look at Wikipedia. There's a line where it says Boba Fett talking to Fennec Shan.
People sleeping on Book of Boba Fett, by the way. They're the lines that just Boba drops sometimes. He drops a lot of like lore based sort of like insults and colloquial, stuff going on. Definitely look at that script. It's fun.
Yeah, here's the quote. Boba Fett, anything from the mayor's major domo? Is he cooperating? Fennec Shan. Oh, he's singing like a Yuzum. So
okay, I like it. I like it. Yeah. Great delivery from Ming Na Wen too.
She is so good.
Great delivery with that show.
Yeah,
all her lines great.
Yeah. I think I've mined everything I possibly can out of this comic.
But
there's a lot, and it's fun. It's a fun read. It goes fast. I don't know. We'll see if there's more. And then around the same time, they released a one-shot comic. For those who aren't comic people, it's probably exactly what you probably get exactly what it sounds like. They just released a standalone one issue of a comic, and it's called A New Legacy. It's to celebrate. We're now at the 10-year anniversary of new canon Marvel Star Wars comics, and so the conceit behind this is basically take a lot of the characters that were introduced just in the comics and tell their stories a little bit. And I think it's telling that we have this happening right before our new mainline Star Wars comic is going to start in. And I feel like we haven't seen the last of Afra or Sonastaros or Valence.
Because Afra's about to get a new run.
Valence.
Yeah.
Sonastaros going to get a new run as well.
I wouldn't be surprised. So yeah. So
interesting.
Yeah.
So we're talking Chrysanthemum, 000, Dr. Afra, Sonastaros, Bylord Valence.
Yep.
Who? Anyone else?
Those are the main ones. There's another one I'm gonna say for a reveal. There's a couple other ones that are like lower level. So there's I think it's Task Force 99. Those are in at the very. It's Karen Gillan wrote that little Jason Aaron wrote that little short story, and that is. Those are the if you remember way back in the first like run of Star Wars main run, there were like the 4 stormtroopers who were like somewhere big. They basically look like
Scar Squadron or Scar.
Yeah, Scar Squadron.
Scar Squadron.
Scar Squadron.
Oh,
exactly.
the guy with the lightsaber.
The guy with the lightsaber. So they do like I'll start with that one. That was just a little comic where they're kind of just his internal monologue of why they're important and needed in the Empire. It's great, but doesn't really do anything other than kind of like give you some perspective of the bad guy.
Those guys?
They're sort of like a Bad Batch overlap. With
exactly. They looked like, when I was reading, I'm like, oh, totally just look like the Bad Batch, but if they stuck with the Empire, basically. Yeah.
Yes. The lightsaber wielding stormtroopers are cool.
It's pretty cool. Yeah. And he gets the menacing.
He's got the Clint Eastwood cape over his stormtrooper armor.
Yeah, like stormtroopers could be cool, Like they can be cool.
They're
don't
the
have
coolest
to be
designs.
morons, like shooting into.
Yeah, they created that character because all of us, when we had stormtrooper action figures, put a lightsaber in their hand. Like, that looks awesome.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just like in this comic, he does the thing where every bad person wielding a lightsaber does, which is just waits till the end and lights it in a threatening manner.
Yeah,
I just laugh every time they do it, and it works. It works. And then I'll circle back to the first one because that's the main one. It's the majority of the comic. But there's a short, like 3-page one called Rogue's Gambit by Karen Gillan. It's Afra is basically on her ship, and Chrysanthemum's playing whatever that game is. I can't think of the game. The Jarek.
There's 2
with the droid.
Okay.
So it's basically a take on Chewie and the catchphrase is "Let the droid win," because in threatening they pull out all their weapons on Black Chrysanthemum.
Yeah. It's
each other.
The inverse of it. Yeah, those are droids you want to let win.
Yep. And then you cut away. They're all fighting. You cut away, and Vader comes in, and he's like, "What happened here?" Basically, like the entire room is wrecked. Like it's like a dad coming home moment.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
I would love one comedic scene with Vader in live action.
Yeah, I mean,
at some point, just one.
Yeah, I would.
Careful you don't choke on your aspirations.
I guess that's the closest we've gotten. Yeah, that's
he
pretty
gets a
much
little punny. He gets a little punny.
It's like I don't even know what the intent of that scene is. I basically leave that scene mystified. I'm like, okay.
That was just it's Krennic, trying I think going over the head of his people.
But it just felt like that's what's going to happen. You're going to report to Mustafar, this lava planet, this unforgiving lava planet. You're going to get unforgiving treatment. It just felt like you're going to your doom, my guy.
Right? Yeah, it does not bode well. That line got audible groans in the theater I was in.
Yeah, because it was so obvious. It was like, of course he chokes. Yeah. You look at the planet. Like this is an inhospitable world. Like this is a horrible place. Like you're going to be treated horribly.
Yes,
exactly. It's so obvious what's to happen there. But it's a little. It's like the definition of spelled out, essentially.
Yeah, it's so true. And then in the first segment of this comic, it's the Grand Imperial Jubilee by our hero Charles Sewell. So it's a good one. It takes place 2 years before the Battle of Yavin, and is the 13th anniversary of Palpatine's ascension. Basically, they're throwing a giant party for that, which also made me realize that Luke Skywalker.
Palpatine's deception.
No, ascension into being the
a God Emperor. Yeah,
which also then made me realize that Luke Skywalker is supposed to be 15. I always forget he's supposed to be 15 in in episode 4.
Wow.
Do that math.
Not 17, 15?
15 because Luke, because if they're celebrating the 13th anniversary,
he's 19 in episode 4.
I know there's some weird continuity error in this thing because let me do the math right, because so it's on Alderaan
right now. I'm looking at my phone
it's now. 2 years BBY, so that's 2 years before the blowing up of the Death Star, right?
Yeah.
It is it's the 13th anniversary of his ascension, which happens right concurrently with Luke's birth, right? So that would make Luke, if my math is correct, which is 13 plus 2, is 15.
Yeah,
it's
but
weird.
I always thought the Battle of Yavin was 19, or the fall of the Empire of the Republic was 19 BBY.
Yeah.
No, now we're getting into it. This is A+ podcast.
Luke is 19 years old.
I need to have
a New Hope. I need that truth to remain. You know, I need that truth out of everything in the world that's speaking to remain.
I need a full wall timeline of Star Wars that I can keep updating so that
I was thinking about that. Like, do you just do expert podcasters just post giant timelines on their wall in front of them? Like, what's going on here?
Yeah, or they actually do the research before they press record.
That's true. They hire a researcher or something. We make
never know what we're going to talk about.
Discourse. Right? We don't have any add-ons here.
Yeah. This thing is so confusing. This is the opening thing. Let me read this to you. I was Googling stuff. Alderaan, 2 BBY, 2 years before the Battle of Yavin. The third decennial Imperial Jubilee. A decennial is a 10-year anniversary. So that's the 30th Imperial Jubilee. I'm wondering, I guess they probably had this Jubilee and they renamed it when it switched from the Republic to the Imperial. I'm guessing that's what happened. And then Afra says, opening night for the 13th anniversary celebration of Emperor Palpatine's ascendance to the official office of Supreme Chancellor? Okay, so that makes more sense. Supreme Chancellor, not... So there you go. So that takes you the 4 years back, which makes Luke 19. Glad we spent 10 minutes figuring that out.
Well, this is important. This is people need to know.
So the whole thing with this is that, but this is well before, if you think about this is well before we're introduced to Afra in the comics, right? Because we are in full before episode 4, which is when we kind of first meet her. We meet her right in between episodes 4 and 5 in the comics. So anyway, she and Sana Starros are there they've been hired to steal an artifact.
Oh, right.
No, that never happens.
No, right. and at the same time, Valance, that guy,
Bylert Valance,
thank you, can never get his name, has been hired as a bounty hunter to track her down. So he's also trying to capture her.
You were pumped to see that.
So
see him enter the story, I'm sure.
So excited. Along with
I like this character. You guys have something against him. I don't understand.
I really do. Rick Duell, Rikdule, is his right-hand man who makes it through the comic.
What?
Rick Duell. So I'm like,
actually, that sounds about right. Valance gets rickrolled. Yeah, that's about right.
But I'm like, I feel like that character actually lives through the entire thing. So I'm like, does he show up in the comics? He must.
He must. There's a million Bylert Valance.
Can I tell you how much I love comic coverage blind with Ben, where I just get to look at Ben just
yeah. He does show up in one other thing, which is Duel of the Retrobates from Revelations, that comic in 2023, who I don't remember that, but apparently is. Anyway, so checks
out Duel of the Reprobates. Old code, but checks out.
So Afra and Sanos, Starro Sanos are breaking in. Ballots on their tail. Meanwhile, you have 2 stormtroopers going through boxes of old artifacts and trying to figure out, just kind of looking at them, and one finds a helmet and goes, oh, this helmet looks interesting. And you turn around and, hello, Momin.
Oh.
It's Momin. It's Momin.
Momin.
I can't take it
Momin to me.
Momin to me. It is Momin. Technically, Grant is correct, but it'll always be Momin to me.
It's Momin.
It's Momin. That's like it's Morbin time. Like we can't do that.
No, that's why the way I like to remember him.
I tell you, it's so funny. I love the character. It's not even like a bit as a snarky name for a character I don't like. I love Momin, but I just can't.
I feel like he's the most. All right, I don't want to go in like completely negative corner over here, but he's almost like the most throwawayable.
Sure.
Most throwaway Sith Lord you could invent. Essentially, he's like a mad art student. Who
I guess so. I just like the different
kicked out of the Sith, or I don't know.
He's got like Loki vibes a little bit.
He is.
He's like a trickster, and he's stuck in a parallel dimension, and he's
it's like he can't do anything. He's kind of just like trapped.
Yeah. No, every 5 years, someone accidentally puts his helmet on, and then he causes some chaos, and then it's done. Yeah. But I do. Yeah, I like him.
Funny Sith antic Sith Lord more than like Darth Bane. When Darth Bane shows up, something's going down. He's talking about the rule of two. He's talking about facts.
Yeah. But here's my thing. Yeah. Here's my defense of Darth Momin is that like between the rule of two and Palpatine, I feel like the Sith were just kind of in hiding, just being mischievous. Like they didn't have it didn't seem to me like they had grand plans until we get to like. We get to the era of the Acolyte.
I've been pitching Ben some ideas this week at work, and it's been dealing with the Sith, and it's I think we underrate how complex the Sith can be. I think we're just like, they're just evil, so there's infighting and they die, and I'm like, I think
I agree. I think
ways to comment on this, and it could be wild and diverse and crazy and fun.
Yeah. A whole ecosystem.
I wonder it really is. Disney owns Star Wars. They're eventually going to have to get in the heart of darkness at some point, which is the Sith Empire. I don't know how they're going to tackle that. It's confounding to me as a fan. Yeah. Like, how is Disney going to, investigate what was the Sith Empire? I do wonder, and we're going to have to get there at some point. It's essentially it's essentially like the biggest era of a sort of like massive scale warfare like that you can think of essentially. And so like a future wars could be huge if you do a Yuzong Vong or Chiss like intergalactic thing. I don't know what you need to do to make like massive sort of like theater of war stories in with post the sequel trilogy, but I know if you go in the past there's lots there, lots.
There's tons. It really feels like they just don't want to touch it for any reason. For some reason, they're just trying to get it right, or I don't know. But it's like, come on, it's like right there for you.
They'll do it. I
think Mangold could set it off if he does that early film correctly.
I think there's going to be none stakes in the Mangold film. I think it's going to be so esoteric because it's like it's pre-Jedi, it's pre-Republic, which actually I just looked in timelines. The Republic was formed in 25,025 years before the Battle of Yavin, and I'm pretty sure Mangold.
He's like 5,000 years before the founding of the Republic, essentially, like his movie.
He's like I think 25 years before the founding of the Republic.
Oh, okay.
I think I'm just picking an even 25,000 years because like that's kind of as far back as galactic history goes, and I just feel like that's where they're going to start. But I don't know. He can do whatever he wants. But it would be nice if he set up this stuff.
I thought Benioff and Weiss were good hires for investigating the Sith. Honestly, I'm trying to think of who else can write sort of the Shakespearean dialogue that I think would be needed for the dialogue between houses.
Get George R.R. Martin. He's not busy.
Sure. I mean, he's literally doing nothing.
Ben, you're out there with a sign picketing outside his house. Like,
oh my gosh. Yeah, it shifts. But everyone else, it's just like, finish your opus, dude.
Yeah. It's
who else could write? I guess the Sith houses essentially and the Sith Empire and that sort of stuff. I'm like trying to think here, and I it's like, do you have to care about Star Wars enough to do a little bit of the research that is in Tales of the Jedi and
and you'd probably need to know history too.
You have to do a lot of research, and then you'd have to commit to double down and be like, oh, okay, let's make the Sith incredibly unique and do all this stuff, and again take in Momin and take in Bane and take in some of the canon lords, right?
James Corey.
Yeah. So my argument for James A. Corey, who is actually not one person, it's two people who worked as fact checkers for George R.R. Martin. So they were the fact checkers. And they wrote the Expanse series of 10 books that turned into really one of the great shows. I'm on the 8th out of 10 books. They can do really interesting multiple storylines with multiple characters and from perspectives. Like their books are so readable and good, and they can do this grand galactic scale that I think could work. I think they would be great at writing at least the script for that, and I think they would be amazing. Yeah.
I'm excited. I mean, Disney is going to have to move into these other. I know Marvel's entering phase 5 at this point. I mean,
who knows?
Star Wars is going to have to enter the Rey era, and then they're going to have to dig into the past with the mangled
they just
Prime Jedi film.
They have to leave the Skywalker era. They have to leave it. They have to leave it for a while. They got to get away from it. Like, right? Like, they've told so many stories in that like 6-year period of the galaxy. Like, come on, move away from it for a while.
Yeah, it's actually making the galaxy feel smaller at this point. It's making the galaxy feel like the Skywalkers were the only tale that mattered in the galaxy, which is insane to me, because you have the Tar Vizsla with the Mandalorians, which we had hinted at. It sounds as epic as a Luke Skywalker. It sounds or a Rey Skywalker. It sounds incredibly epic. I think Tar Vizsla is worth an exploration. I think Darth Bane, who we got in the Clone Wars show, and there's a great book that keeps circulating. Every Star Wars thing I go to, like if I go to play SWU at an organized event or something like that, there's someone talking about the Darth Bane books, and I'm like, we're just sitting here, and those books are actually deeply appreciated by fans, and they're being spread around circles of Star Wars fans. I don't know why you're not executing on sort of the Darth Bane material or the Rule of Two and that sort of stuff as soon as possible. And I think the Acolyte was maybe looking at market data and being like, this is some of our more favorable content. Let's get into the Rule of Two. Let's get into the Sith. Let's explore that. But I think like to eject out of that situation as fast and as kind of like unexpected as they did, it's pretty, it doesn't send a very good message to the fan base, who's like, oh, well, this is actually, you're going in the right direction here, right? But you actually reversed course out of that, out of the exploration of the Sith. And I think that to us, it's like, no, that seems like the next hurdle. It seems like that, the Jedi and attachment, it seems like a Jedi attachment, the Sith, the origins of the Force. Obviously, Mangold's onto something with going into the origin of the Force. That's actually like deep and hallowed territory that I thought no one would be able to explore. So I was like, wow, that's that's something that I almost felt like we shouldn't explain, like Yoda's homeworld. But I'm almost certain that the Mandoverse needs to end with Yoda's homeworld at this point. Right? Like now, you have convinced me as a fan that it's almost like the best
wild to hear you say that
story ending for the Mandalorian TV series and the ongoing story between Mando and Grogu is that he returns Grogu to all the Yodas. You know what I mean? And so like it's weird that it's gotten there, because I thought that was almost something that like was almost like you could not go there. That's lock and key. We do not explore where Yoda came from.
And do you know who needs to direct that episode?
Rick Famuyiwa.
Spielberg. You need to get Spielberg to do it because it's reverse ET, right? Like it's getting ET back to you. Actually follow ET back to his home. You get Spielberg to come in for one episode. I mean, you can do it,
Adam. That is the best. That is probably. Honestly, that's the most interesting thing I've ever heard on this podcast of any of us three. That's brilliant. And
he came in.
Why would he ever step down to prestige TV when he's just makes the greatest films of all time? And it's kind of weird.
Who knows? People do weird stuff sometimes. I doubt it would ever happen. But also, like he came into episode 3. He was on set a lot.
The credit would make me cry.
Yeah, right. And like
credit,
especially like it's he is and was super close friends with Lucas. They worked so close together, and so many times like he jumped in to do favors for Lucas a lot. Like I don't think Kingdom of the Crystal Skull was really high on Spielberg's to-do list, but everyone came in and he's like, all right, I'll do it. I got you.
It's the ultimate return home moment.
Yeah.
The ultimate.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And like all of it, like I just think of E.T. and Close Encounters. Like he
feels so alone with Mando. Yeah. He feels so, it's the void of space. And then the cockpit of the N1 starfighter and Mando, and it just he feels so alone to me. And I feel like the perfect ending for Grogu is to be reunited with all the Yodas.
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. You feel that way. I feel
that's just storytelling. This is where I come from as a storyteller. And it's literally, I thought you weren't allowed to do this. That's why I was like, it's almost like it's show don't tell. It's like it's the things that like these hard rules that you're just never allowed to deviate from. And it's like, no, we're gonna do this. I think it's It's exposition. It's what you're told not to do, essentially. It's like flashbacks. Like there's the things that people hate. In they say they hate, but actually works incredibly well. It's a tried and true technique that actually only I think fools would endeavor to avoid these techniques. It's kind of like they're there for a reason. Like they are powerful moments. The return home is huge. But just how you do it is going to be what is different.
Well said. With that, maybe we should return home from our cafe in the stars.
Oh, wait.
I have Hoth-size amounts of snow to shovel.
Yes. Let me finish up because I hadn't finished up the comic real quick because I just want to say one thing.
Okay.
Because you don't really you know what happens at the end.
Just derailed us.
So, but I want to say I want to see how upset Grant's going to get in a second. So Momin walks around and there's all these art installations as the party's going on, and he sees one that's giant, and he looks at it, says "Artist Unknown," and it's one of his. So he gets super angry that no one recognized that was his art, and then he just starts wrecking shop. And it's
I love that.
Literally, he just yells, "Artist Unknown! I am Momin!"
That's amazing.
I'm Darth Momin.
Yeah, and then Afra and Valance team up to get out of there alive, basically, and then who is it? Oh, Commander Zara. That was like that's the female head of Tarkin's like controllers that like way back in early Star Wars. Just takes out her sword.
Like a super Tarkin fan girl.
Yep, exactly. Yes. Takes out her sword and just stabs the stormtrooper, and Momin's helmet rolls off, and then end of Momin for now. But anyway, Tarkin's there. So anyway, it's a fun read. It's great. Sewell is just like writing it, going like, how do we get all these people in the room together and have some fun, basically.
Oh, fun. All right, I'm looking forward to reading that. Then that'll be a blast.
Good.
The end. Yeah.
The end. All right. So now.
Yes, now we can dismount.
Now we can, yeah.
All right, great. This has been awesome, guys. Super fun. Love our AM chats. Hopefully next week, though, we can get back into a proper cantina at cocktail hour and do our thing. But thanks, everyone, for listening to us this week. We'll talk to you again next week on Cantina Chronicles.